Nanotechnology. Welcome, viewers. This section is on nanotechnology, material sciences, the idea that you can do interesting things with very small things that you can't do with large things. Now, me and Adrian just recently completed a nanotechnology course on Coursera, and I thought it would be a great idea because Adrian has got quite a bit of background in nanotechnology, has managed projects that deal with nanotechnology, so I thought he would be an ideal person to interview on the subject. What is nanotechnology, Adrian, and why are we transhumanists particularly interested in it?
Okay, so official definitions of nanotechnology are the manipulation of and/or creation of things in the 1 to 100 nanometer range with interesting properties because of being in that range. Examples include certain magnets which acquire certain properties on that size scale which they don't have at larger size scales, or smaller, although there's not that much smaller. Um, Certain kinds of extreme surface area things, because the smaller you make it for the same mass, the more surface area you have, and so on and so forth. And my particular interest is mainly in what's called NEMS, nano-electrical mechanical systems, which is basically shrinking down of the microelectrical mechanical systems, where you have electrically operated mechanical things or mechanically operated things which alter electrical properties. And it's basically the closest you can get to physically manipulating things at the small scale. It's not exactly an easy topic.
Right. NEMS.
As to why transhumanists are interested, it's because of the range of things that nanotechnology enables.
Hmm.
Super strength materials, much faster computation, direct manipulation of biological processes, that is a smaller, in fact, many cases smaller than relevant biological mechanisms, yada, yada, yada.
Hmm. Right. So another interesting thing I thought would be useful with nanotechnology is you may be able to synthesize from relatively easy to find material the material that you want, which means distribution becomes less of a problem.
Yes, you're talking about Drexlerian nanotechnology,
Oh,
molecular assembly, right?
yes, or atomically precise manufacturing and such.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's
which is currently not currently a science fiction idea, but it doesn't actually appear to violate any laws of physics that we know it.
hmm.
Although some people will tell you otherwise, they are misreading what exactly is being proposed.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we recently did a course, as mentioned previously, and the course was put on by Rice University, and guess who came from Rice University?
Smalley,
Smalley,
Richard.
the homecoming queen, as described by people at Rice University. It's a bit of a joke, internal joke there. So yeah, it was an interesting course. It was relatively short. I thought it was quite involved, but for people who already know quite a bit about nanotechnology, it probably was just really covering some of the basics.
Yeah,
But it was
I took it as a
pretty good.
refresher myself. So
Yeah, 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 yeah. so like it did confirm a lot of like the high level understanding I had about what was possible, near term possible with nanotechnology. Um, and so, look, I'm interested in the future of photovoltaics, for instance, the energy collection that nanotechnology may enable.
mhm.
And so, yeah, it's good to have a formal introduction to nanotechnology, and the information being made in an accessible manner through these MOOCs. Anyway, so what did you think of the course? What did you get out of it?
Well, again, it was a refresher for me, but also I'd never really had a formal introduction to nanotechnology. I kind of like eased my way into it,
Mm,
as I do
mm,
many areas.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was a good survey. It touched on major areas: nano optics, nanomagnetics, and nanomaterials in general.
Sure. Yeah, 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 yeah. So, I mean, is there anything which was new for you, which was of particular interest?
Um, nothing really that new. Although I hadn't had exposure to the nanomagnetics that much, so that was new.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And what is nanomagnetics while we're here?
Properties of magnetic materials at the nanoscale.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the underlying mechanisms of magnetics mean that the exact properties of magnetic materials change when you get down to that scale. The one of the professors likened it to you can have a smaller and smaller dog, but then you get past a certain scale, and all of a sudden becomes a nano cat.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting that biological systems, some bacteria seems to evolve to utilize this nanomagnetics. Did you read a paper? Did you read the paper on that? It was part of
Yeah.
one of yeah, yeah.
Well, I didn't think that they really evolved to use nanomagnetics. Rather, nanomagnetics can be used to manipulate them in certain interesting ways.
Okay.
But that's just a matter of okay, you inject stuff and then you magnetize the material and you apply a field to cause physical changes within a cell.
Yes. Yeah. And so, what potential would that have practically?
Um, you gain the ability to manipulate stuff within a cell, which has all kinds of possible applications. For instance, if you can find a way to get this material to only be taken up by cancer cells,
Mm-hmm.
and then the manipulation is pulling it violently out to kill the cells that it's within, well, guess what? You just found a way to selectively kill cancer cells.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's application for that.
Yeah, that's an application I'd like to see. So another one was gold coated glass nanoparticles that could be sort of coaxed into areas of the body and warmed or heated to an extent it killed all neighboring cells.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very popular one. That's been around for quite a while, right?
Yeah. Yeah, of course, there's the alternative of, say, an injection right to that particular site, but then you have to have a path from outside the body to that particular site. Whereas this, you can use the circulatory system to target to get in without having to get a channel from outside to in.
Right. And it's interesting. Robert Friedrich Jr. has been right into nanomedicine. I think that's one of the things. Eric Drexler seemed to touch on it from my readings. I haven't actually read all his work, but like Robert Friedrich Jr. said that nanomedicine would be very interesting. His Kurzweil thinks you can fill the body with all these little nanobots and go around and do wonderful things. But Robert Friedrich Jr. thinks, well, that may be possible long term, but you still need to um, expel all these nanoparticles or these nano devices once they stop working because they won't work forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about the full-on Drexlerian,
Yeah.
the nano robotics at the in the long term. We're talking about like in the more short term, I guess. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Okay. So it's interesting that there was a bit of a debate about Smalley versus Drexler, and Rice University is particularly, I think, a little bit dismissive of Drexler's ideas. It came across in the forums, but
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
it is the Smalley Institute after all,
that's
so
right. Yeah.
they're kind of expected to bias towards Smalley,
Mm,
even if Smalley got a lot of things wrong.
right. Well, what did Smalley get wrong? What are some of the major things which you think Smalley got wrong?
Well, okay, so we're talking about the Smalley versus Drexler debate,
Yep.
and anyone who doesn't know it, just look up Smalley versus
Versus
Drexler
Drexler.
debate, and you'll find tons of material
Mm,
on this.
yes.
Okay, so with that as a background, so Smalley and Drexler kept talking past each other.
Mm,
Smalley was talking about the fat fingers and sticky fingers of physically directly manipulating atoms, and Drexler kept saying, "Oh no, no, I'm not directly physically manipulating." And Smalley is just, "Okay, how are you?" Drexler said, "Read my book." Smalley says, "Well, yeah, but the fat fingers and sticky fingers." Come on, guys. And
mm,
that's not what he said. That's not what he said.
yeah.
Drexler could have done better to actually point out specific mechanisms of how exactly are you going to manipulate these atoms.
Mm,
There are ways to do it without physically touching them.
yeah.
Lasers, for example.
Right.
Optical tweezers have been demonstrated.
Yeah.
Smalley, on the other hand, needed to see, okay, Drexler said that these objections don't apply and gave reasons. So you can't just keep going back to those objections after they've been ruled out.
Hmm. So they weren't actually talking about each other's arguments, they were just straw manning each other, is that what you're saying?
The
Intentionally or
strawman
unintentionally?
problem, one of the classic examples of strawman.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the viewers probably don't even know who Eric Drexler is. Maybe we should sort of describe who he is and why
Well,
he's so important to
in short,
nanotechnology.
Eric Drexler is one of the initial visionaries for nanotechnology, not the only one by any means,
Hmm.
and one of the more far out ones of the big thinkers cited. His big thing, or at least the thing he's most well known for, is his vision of atomically precise manufacturing, which is where
Hmm.
you take one atom, you place it in an exact location, you take another atom, you place it in an exact location, bond it, and so on and so forth.
Hmm. Yeah.
And you can do this. If you could do this, you can then create any crystal lattice structure or any atomic structure you want, and in theory, build out molecules from that. One of the classic examples is diamondium, which is basically diamond without any flaws whatsoever,
Right.
which in theory could possibly get rid of some the brittleness problem, which is why you don't actually build things on a diamond, because they would shatter.
Yeah.
Well, this wouldn't, in theory.
Uh-huh.
Or at least it'd be a lot stronger.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. There's Diamond Age. Who wrote that again? Anyway, so there's been science fiction about this. That often people think that oh, it's in science fiction, it won't happen. It'd be very interesting if we did have basic materials that were very, very strong, and very conductive, and extremely light and flexible.
You mean Neil Stephenson's
Yeah, that's
Diamond
right.
Age?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, that's just one of the possibilities. But yeah, generally lighter, stronger, more exactly manufactured thing. A more practical one would probably be exactly manufactured proteins. Currently, biologists get into all kinds of twists, saying, okay, exactly how is this protein going to fold?
yeah,
There are many competitions which says, okay, given this string of proteins, how is it going to fold up? Well, if you can create, uh, put this one and put this one and here and then fold it over this way, you don't have to predict. You just made it that way.
right. So it's not about modeling how an actual protein would actually work. It's about just putting one together and seeing how it works.
Pretty much, except that this would be making the actual protein.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's not virtualizing or making
yeah.
statistical predictions about how things work. It's actually just watching,
It's
creating.
phase creation, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Which
So this is
beats out a lot of the randomization, which has side effects and can bullocks up clinical trials. So,
hmm, okay. So do you think that's well? How far are we from you know mass scale affordable diamondoid material for use?
first we have to actually demonstrate this even in the lab.
Okay, so we've demonstrated graphene, but that's different.
Yeah,
We talk about
and
graphene later.
graphene existed beforehand anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It did. It's just hard to make, hard to mass produce.
Yeah.
So what's the main difference then between like a diamondoid, which is like based on carbon, and graphene, which is basically one layer
Lattice
of
structure
carbon?
mainly,
Sorry.
which lattice structure, crystal structure,
Yeah.
which infers all kinds of mechanical, mainly mechanical, but also electrical properties.
Yeah. So what benefits would diamondoid have over graphene, for instance? Yeah.
Stronger, possibly lighter per unit strength, different optical properties certainly. Diamond is notoriously transparent if you got pure diamond.
Yeah.
Graphene isn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, do you think? Well, I'm a photographer. Well, kind of. I call myself a photographer. I take heaps of photos, but I've never done any courses. I
You're breaking up again.
Oh, sorry. I've done plenty of like photography, but I've never really done any formal courses or been to uni or done anything that some of the more professionals like to claim is a requirement for photography. Um, so yeah, it'd be very interesting what could be achieved with lensing with these with diamondoid.
Mhm.
Perhaps absorbing a lot more light than what glass possibly could,
Yeah.
and be able to create them on like massive scales and be very light and whatnot would be very useful.
And in addition, stronger, lighter materials finds all kinds of other uses. One of the ones I would be studying is vehicles, but that's just
Hmm.
me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cars, yeah, ships, possibly getting rockets light enough
Rockets.
that, yeah.
I mean, that's a big problem. Getting into space requires launching large amounts of like a heavy material into space.
Well, this is the nanotechnology part. If you want me to segue into rocketry, I can segue into rocketry. Believe me.
Hmm. Yeah,
The
go
the
on.
main the main pro- well, the main problem there is fuel,
Yes.
and the rocket itself, and the mass fraction. That's the main problem. The
Mm.
second one is the economics.
Mm.
One of my side ventures is a little thing I'm calling CubeCap.
Yeah.
Um, in short, it's an effort to take a single CubeSat. Anyone who doesn't know what a CubeSat is, look it up. CUBESAT. It's a launch standard or
Yeah.
satellite standard. Anyway, so it's an effort to take single 1U CubeSats
Mm.
and launch them as their own payload. That
Right.
is impossible these days.
Yes.
There is no commercially available rocket with a less than multi-ton payload. So either you need to gather a bunch of CubeSats up and send them up in a package, or you need to hitch a ride with a larger payload.
Mm.
Calls those the bus in the truck model. Sometimes you just want a cab. So QCAP.
Mm.
The effort is intending to turn these satellites around in a month or less. Currently, there is no way you can get a launch in less than a year, and 2 years is more common,
Mm-hmm.
which completely cuts out all kinds of possible markets. One of the target markets that we're looking at is a university, where they could do a class year every year of a quarter of theory, a quarter of building the satellite, then hand the satellite to us. We get it launched sometime around spring break,
Mm.
give or take a couple months, and then they get a month or two of operation, and then the satellite re-enters the atmosphere and burns up over summer break.
Mm.
And then they just do this every year, repeat customer. If we get enough of them, we're profitable, and then you get all of these class years of students who come out of college having done something in space. And you get a lot more people being able to practically experiment with, okay, what can you do with space?
Right.
Okay, rocketry ran over.
No, no, no. I like the idea. I mean, like the idea that we can get technology into space has been a problem like for quite a while, and one way that people have been theorizing is through space elevators. That may be another thing enabled by the strength
Yeah,
and the flexibilities, durability
yeah.
that's
Even
afforded through
even without
nanotechnology.
atomically precise manufacturing, there's been space elevator competitions creating better, stronger cables and the robots to ride up and down them.
Yeah. And if we had the material that was durable enough and was functional enough to be repurposed,
Mhm.
then maybe it would be so much space junk.
Eh, not necessarily. I mean, carbon nanotubes can already be manufactured today. They can't be manufactured very long.
Hmm.
And that's the main thing. If you could find a way to just churn out a long thread of carbon nanotubes, then you could, uh, uh, in theory, build a long enough a thread to reach all the way up to orbit and build a space elevator out of those.
Yep. Okay. Just 1 second. Someone at the door. 1 minute. One second.
Okay.
Again. Sorry about that. Yeah. So, okay. Space elevators. Um,
Yeah.
how far off are we? We're talking about these technologies may enable some amazing things, but how far? Okay, and qualify that with some assumptions about some progress that needs to be achieved before we get there.
So the main thing is just building the large carbon nanotubes, or the long carbon nanotubes.
Hmm.
Um, and for that, well, certainly atomically precise manufacturing would help with that. It's not the only way. I hesitate to put exact year
Sure.
figures on this because he'll probably be way off. Um,
Feel free to have large confidence intervals. But describe, well, yeah, you go
I,
ahead.
I'd say probably 10 to 20 years before we know, or before we have a really good idea of how to make long carbon nanotubes. And then from that, it's a matter of commercializing this so that you actually can actually have someone who can make these. And from that, then you have to queue up specifically the space elevator project, which will probably have been going on the side until then. Another problem is you have to clean up low Earth orbit. There's a lot of space debris, and anything in low Earth orbit needs to steer around the elevator when it comes near it. That, or you need to arm the elevator itself to be able to blow away any space junk, and expect some international troubles around that.
Yeah. I mean, if there's collaborations between certain countries, it might make it a lot easier than like if these elevators and satellites are sort of going into near Earth orbit around
Well,
the
let me
over
catch you
countries.
on that little correction you made: companies versus countries.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
it can be fairly said that the U.S. space effort stalled around 1970, 1980.
Hmm.
The U.S. government space effort.
Hmm.
On the other hand, how much use of space has there been made by private entities in the U.S.?
Hmm.
I mean, who owns most of the communications satellites? Who owns? Um, I almost want to say most of the actual experiments in space these days. At least the ones going up on U.S. satellites.
Hmm.
It ain't the government, although NASA certainly tries. Increasingly, what we're seeing is private entities going up, and yeah, NASA does quite a bit of stuff, but more and more people are trying to find uses for ways to do stuff in space.
Hmm.
I mean,
Asteroid
it's
mining.
using serious private efforts to mine the
Hmm.
asteroids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good motivator.
Yeah.
That's for
Well,
sure.
if they can
SpaceX.
get even one of the asteroids pays off the way it looks like it will,
Hmm.
oh my, are they going to be rich?
Hmm.
And what are they going to put that for? Well, gee, they just made their bucks off of space. They'll probably try to do it again,
Hmm.
and in doing so, pave the way for space industrialization,
Hmm.
which is the main thing that's needed. Basically, putting infrastructure in space to be able to do stuff.
Hmm. Wow. Pretty soon we'll have a Dyson sphere.
Uh, not this century.
Yeah, I know. A matryoshka brain.
Eh, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about large scale, like long term possibilities made with nanotechnology, because I know everybody's really wanting to hear about what's possible, and everybody has their own ideas. Do you think Dyson spheres are possible, or even further
Well, no
matryoshka
question they're
brains?
possible, but they
Yep,
don't even require nanotech.
yep.
In fact, they are kind of the opposite end of the scale. They are a megastructure by definition.
Hmm. But I mean, surely the material used to the efficiency of the material used in designing megastructures would be greatly benefited from atomically precise manufacturing.
Yeah, no question.
Yes.
However, you also have to actually get the material over there. Um, by the
Couldn't you
time we
just
get
like,
the material over there, we'll probably have stuff strong enough.
yeah, yeah. Couldn't we just like repurpose like some of the dust flying around, meteors, maybe even some of the ice in the.
We probably will by that point. Yeah,
Mm, yeah. When do you see that
yeah.
happening? 200, 1,000,
Um,
10,000 years?
it depend. It really depends on how successful these asteroid mining guys are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if they are wildly successful, then we can easily see serious efforts to do that within the next 50 years, probably within the next 25. If they get up to a middling start, then it may take a little longer.
Mm.
And if they crash and burn and go nowhere, then it's going to be a few more decades before anyone else tries.
Right. So the success of such projects really does have a lot to do with the psychology behind the efforts being made, right? Nobody's going to be bothered, or if people are scared away from such efforts, then it's less likely that people are going to spend money on them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but if there's enthusiasm and support, and if there's a financial motive behind it, then there's definitely that's a like a strong mechanism to get people excited and involved in these sorts of projects.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And one thing I wish to note, by the way,
Yep.
so we've kind of diverged across topics, and
We
this is what's
certainly have.
part of the problem of talking about nanotechnology. It's such a broad field.
That's right.
I mean, it's like trying to talk about physics or
Mm.
chemistry.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Well, I get excited about these sorts of things, and
Yeah,
sometimes
and a lot
that
of people
results in me
do
getting a bit
for good
scattered.
reason.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about something more specific, some more specific forms of nanotechnology. We'll talk about like we've spoken about the Drexler Smalley debate. Um, what near term applications do you think is really worth pursuing in nanotechnology? Then for some of the more, let's say, medical stuff, because we touched on that. Do you think what's happening now? What can people get behind?
Protein creation, protein synthesis is certainly a good one.
Yeah.
Um, as is a better modeling of the cell, better investigation of exactly what goes on the cellular level, or being able to get a better whole body picture of what's going on. Another possibility is better interfaces to nervous systems.
Right.
I mean, there have
Including the
been
brain.
chips that can directly interface to nervous tissue. For well, my master's thesis was on a means of directly communicating between electromechanical systems and the human nervous system. And
Right.
people took my thesis, and like 3 years later, they had a chip on it. And that was just my thesis was just a drop in the bucket with that. But these days, they got artificial retinas restoring sight to the blind.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah,
And this wouldn't have been possible without advances in material sciences.
and much of which were enabled by nanotechnology.
Yes.
As we can get better interfaces, the classic image of a cyborg, so a computer tracking into the brain directly, becomes more possible. Currently, you got electrodes which are completely outside, and because you can't do anything that's small enough to be safe
Hmm.
to jack in. Part of it is also people don't know where to put it in the brain,
Right.
and that's an issue too.
So the visualization that people have of jacking in most likely comes from the Matrix. Do you think that's the form of jacking in that will um,
Um,
develop?
well, just from one aesthetic note, I think a more likely method is something that doesn't actually break the skin. So
Hmm.
you'd have like an implant underneath the skin, and then you'd have something else that can magnetically couple over, and you can exchange signals by induction. But at no point do you actually breach the skin,
Right.
except to do the implant. But then it heals over, and then it's just okay. You got a little lump underneath your skin. Big
Right.
whoop.
Okay. So this little implant, would that be like a repeater or some sort of amplifier of signal, or
Yeah,
something
pretty much.
computational? Yeah. Will
Yeah,
have an IP
repeater
address.
amplifier probably also take charge from the outside. Low enough electric field so as not to damage the skin that the signals and power are going across.
Right.
And that can be an issue with long term, but there are ways around that.
Yeah. I mean, like I can't see it being that bad having like a an external interfacing thing. I mean, people with cochlear implants,
Yeah.
they've
Well,
got
and
machinery on the side of their head. They're
another
happy to do that.
thing I'd really like to see someone try to commercialize, and actually there have been efforts to get it in the lab. I haven't seen anyone be able to seriously take this on as a commercialization effort. Blood fuel cell. What this is it mimics the ATP cycle, that the body naturally does,
Yeah.
to break down the body's own energy,
Hmm.
take it, convert it to electrical power, and then use it to power whatever.
Hmm.
The first cycle, first generation could be just waste heat, just get the power and then waste the power.
Hmm.
So you're literally burning calories.
So, and using those energies for interesting things
Well, using would
to
be second
power.
generation. Just burning the energy. I mean, okay, yeah, I could stand to lose a little weight myself, but technically I'm not obese. There are how many actually obese people just in America, let alone most Western nations, who, if you give this to, this wouldn't be a panacea, but oh boy, would it help.
Right. But where would the heat go? Where would the energy go?
First generation, you just vent it. Second generation and later, you make some uses of it. But just having a way to help dynamically control a body's metabolism programmatically
Yeah.
without worrying about what you're going to do with the energy, just get rid of it.
Yeah. Wow.
Or you could couple it to some external charger to say that you probably couldn't power a battery off of it. I mean, the human body is amazingly efficient,
Yeah,
and
I
the
know. Yeah.
constant is
Yeah.
amazingly low power
Yeah.
compared to most of the battery technologies that we have.
Hmm.
I mean, it's kind of like a lightning bolt. Yeah, a lightning bolt is an amazing concentration of power, but it doesn't actually have that much power. The only reason it's awesome is because it's so much power concentrated in such a small area,
Hmm.
not because it's actually that much power.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, what about some other nanotechnology implementations that like loom large in the imagination, like respirosites and whatnot?
Um,
You're aware of respirosites? They deliver oxygen around the body, so theoretically you could sit at the bottom of a pool for ages
yeah,
without breathing, run a 10 kilometer um, jog without sweating and all that sort of thing.
yeah,
Efficient transportation of oxygen around the body.
mhm, yeah. Another possibility is better recognition of what foreign bodies are, or programmable T cells. Um,
Right. Yes.
so that if some virus is coming along, well, currently you got vaccines.
Hmm.
Well, instead of having to inject a vaccine, you can distribute just the software. Now, of course, this runs into problems of what happens if someone hacks into that,
Hmm.
which would probably be the main reason why we're not going to see that anytime soon.
Hmm.
But
Interesting
you
thing
could
about.
also use this to program against allergens.
Hmm.
If people have food allergies, what happens if you can use this to get rid of them?
Hmm.
You can deprogram the immune system to be not allergic to some things it shouldn't be allergic to.
Yeah. And here's an interesting thing. I think naturally T cells occur slightly differently for different people. It's part of the reason why, like, one particular virus won't wipe out everybody that easily. Uh, is partly comes down to that. You could do that programmatically too, as a sort of stopgap between like one particular hack attempt getting everybody. You could program like you'd have maybe nonces built into these T cells that individual to or unique to people have many different types in one particular body that I guess dealt with that helped I guess applied a unique approach to dealing with foreign bodies or unwanted foreign bodies in unique ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. This the applications of nanotechnology to biology. I mean, look, a lot of us do want to, especially in the transhumanist community, want to be around, want to live longer, want to experience longer, have longer lives, and have a choice about when we sort of stop existing.
When
Uh,
or if, yeah.
yeah, exactly right. Um, so it seems as though nanotechnology is approaching, enabling some of these visions. And I want
Mm-hmm.
to be around, to see this curve of technological growth. I'd like to see some of the implementations of what's possible in this material universe.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, like the mind boggles, but being around for long enough to actually see what's possible, then I won't
Yeah.
need to just rely on my imagination. I want to be there.
Hey, me too.
Mm.
I mean, give me. I said when or if. Put me down in the if camp.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm just wondering, do you think we'll ever be able to optimize some of the physical nature of the universe without actually destroying it or causing some sort of nasty chain reaction, so that even more possibilities are allowed with some of the elements that are available to us.
I would say that humanity has a long and rich tradition of doing exactly that, even with all the tech that we have today.
Hmm.
And making new tech to do more of that, yes.
Sure. One
I
of
mean,
the
this is a tradition that dates at least back to the Stone Age.
hmm
At least.
hmm. So, looking at the periodical table, we can see, we can see like a progression from some of the lighter elements to the heavy elements, and so the ones that don't pop in and out of existence really quickly, we have some stable elements there, like the physics that we experience is held together by some sort of island of stability, if that's like a semi-accurate description. But it is theorized that there is other islands of stability. It might be possible to sort of build bridges to these other islands of stability. Um,
And find out what these higher atomic numbers are useful for. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Is that something that you've thought about, or the extropian community has discussed in the
Um,
past?
it's not been really that popular a topic because you have this currently unobtainable material. What can it possibly do?
Well, we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. You could attribute any properties to it,
Hmm.
and you don't have any data to back it up.
Hmm.
Yeah, it quickly delves into the realm of pure speculation.
Yeah, very, very theoretical. You can't test these theories at all. Do you think we'll develop virtualization technologies to test theories of what's possible with physics before we can actually test them in physics?
I would argue that that's already been done quite a lot.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, how many simulation software do we already have? How many fields are enabled by that?
Hmm.
And I don't just mean assisted, enabled by that.
Right.
The whole computer-aided design community,
Yeah.
aerospace simulations.
Yes. But they're all
Uh,
informed about known properties and tested properties of physics, right?
they start from that,
Yeah.
but some of them go on to expand to things nobody has been able to test before.
Right.
Um, for example, okay, what happens if you do this orbital path versus that orbital path?
Yeah.
Well, if you're doing it on, say, a 10-year mission without actually having to do it, okay, yeah, we know about orbital dynamics and stuff.
Hmm.
But then what happens if you intercept a comet?
Yeah.
I think there may have been a few missions that actually intercepted comets or asteroids and suddenly altered their trajectory, but not much, and certainly it was simulated before that ever happened.
Hmm. Hmm. But then,
Um,
the simulations can only take you so far as the complexity of the simulation. How complex do simulations need to be? I guess it really depends, right? But for
yeah,
instance, in this example, did it need to accurately model all of physics in order to do what it did? No, right?
yeah.
You just model
Well,
what you
and,
need.
and it's probably going to be the case even for design accessibility. It doesn't need to model relativistic trajectories to model, okay, what's going to be the properties of atomic number 200.
Hmm. So yeah, okay. So it may be actually possible to make near enough predictions about what's possible on like a stability island X in the theoretical
It could be,
table of
yeah.
elements. Yeah. Okay.
It could be, yeah.
Hmm. Talking about simulations, do you think we're in a simulation?
There is no way to tell.
Yeah, you haven't found any
My
Easter eggs.
personal hunch is no, but that's pure speculation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And besides, even if we were, so what? Nothing we can do about it.
yeah. How would it change things?
Yeah.
Would it, I mean, like the only thing which I think it could change is trying to sort of generate interest in the simulator and asking it questions, or seeing if we can sort of bridge to an outer onion layer of simulation, right?
Find me a way to interface with that layer, and I'll take
Yeah,
it. Until
yeah,
then, we don't have one, and may as well not exist.
yeah. That's true. So, well, there's been I didn't read it. Did you read? There was an article recently about the universe being more evidence towards the hypothesis that the universe is more of a hologram that is actually, a physical thing.
I haven't read that much about matters beyond the current solar system.
Yeah.
Because quite a lot of it strikes me as speculating without that much data.
Mhm.
I mean, that's the entire dark matter problem. Is
Mhm.
okay. The models say gravitation should be like this if you have enough mass, but we don't have nearly enough mass. Where's the missing mass?
Right.
It could easily be a calculation error.
Yeah.
Not so much that someone made a type of one calculator,
Yeah.
but just the models that we think apply don't quite apply at large scale. So we're just making up suppositions because we don't have nearly enough data,
Yeah.
and we're not going to get enough data until we get off a lot of people off the planets.
Right. Well, this brings into question, the allocation of funds, the allocation of like public and private funds to projects. There's a lot of interest in finding out what happened at the start of the universe and what's going on at the end of the universe, and what this universe looks like over there. Look, I'm interested in finding out that just from like my thirst for knowledge and thirst for what's possible. But it may not be all that practical necessarily, you know. So there's the argument between like the whole theoretical physics compared to some of the more implementable approaches. Um, do we research science just for the sake of researching science without near-term technological spin-offs in mind? Or
That's that's not even that's not even really the best question to ask.
yeah, sure.
That gets down to okay, where do we spend our science resources?
Yes, that's right. That's the
The
question.
problem is, you get down to that, you get into these internal science fights. So you favor this discipline over that discipline, and you know what? You look at all the money that could be spent on science
Yeah.
versus all these big things that are major waste, major obvious waste.
Yes.
Drop
Right.
it in the bucket practically.
Mm.
The big government programs like, oh, say the war in Afghanistan. You cut that down, and everything benefits, and we got a lot more science dollars to boot.
Right. So often countries, in order to maintain some level of competition status quo, don't focus on new technological solutions because they don't have precedence. For instance, it's hard to argue, especially with lawyers, about something that doesn't have too much precedence. I think that's part of the problem of getting large bodies investing lots of money unless they can be sure that there's going to be some sort of financial spin-off in the near term.
Yeah. Well, and there are quite a lot of things that could be invested to improve science and technology in general that would have obvious payoffs.
Mm.
This asteroid mining thing being one of them.
Yeah. Hmm.
Uh, or better training of workers to get them into the labor force.
Hmm.
Which granted is kind of tertiary to this, but it still applies. You get people who aren't currently working, you train them up on things that need doing, and all of a sudden you have a larger labor force that does this other thing that you needed doing.
Yeah. Wow. So, is there any particular projects in nanotechnology going on now that you think entrepreneurs, angel investors, any large resources of money should like focus on?
Um, there are. I don't have a complete list off the top of my head.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, Certainly, better manipulation of things at the small scale in general would be useful, although that might not be as easy to achieve good rewards on. Um, a lot of the more obvious ones already do have much money backing them, and it's just a matter of awareness. Carbon nanotubes are a classic one. Again, you just bulk manufacture, bulk length manufacture. Um, Solar cells, theoretically, but come on, solar cells have been discovered. Just follow bidding money in there. I don't need to push that button.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, biotech in general, but
Sure.
again, that's its own sector. And
Mm.
technically, almost anything biotech is nanotech, but yeah, almost every economic report that classifies things by technology area classifies biotech off of its own area because it has its own rules and regulations and stuff and risks.
Mhm. Yeah, sure. Um, okay, well, is there anything, any technology okay, so you've been thinking about these sorts of things in the past. Is there any ideas or sort of ways of thinking, any predictions which you once held close to your heart, which later you'd been surprised by, or you've updated your views based on new evidence that and which has caused you to discard old predictions or discard old views, if you know what I mean by the question.
Yeah, I'm trying to think as I keep in my headspace of my current views more than my historical views.
Mm, yeah, yeah. So, like, for instance, I used to think that technology was like an amazing thing. I was interested in some of the science fiction, but it really didn't play out what was possible with AI. I didn't really apply, you know, the idea that AIs could develop like a wants or motives or have goals or anything like that. It was always just like a tool that is just as deterministic as like a hammer, for instance. But yeah, the idea that AIs could really actually like become their own agents, think for themselves,
Well,
is something which
they
didn't
still
come until
they still
later in life.
can. And there's work going into them. It's going to take a while before that comes about. And also, how is that going to actually be useful?
Hmm.
Um, okay, you got basically you set up another person with their needs, their wants, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But how is that helping the person who set them up?
Hmm.
Whereas if you have this intelligent assistant that you can ask a question in, granted a certain subfield, and they can instantly answer,
Hmm.
that's useful.
Hmm.
Technology is going to tend to flow more towards that which benefits people than that which would merely be cool.
So it's interesting to think about what sort of problems an AI with self-reflection and its own goals would likely solve compared to one that didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's problems that we know about that we can't solve ourselves, which we have AIs to help with. And then there's problems that we can't even begin to really think about that may be of quite useful. The solutions could be quite useful. That something with like an AI would be able to stumble on through, the something akin to curiosity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that latter field of possible explorations into the landscape of engineering possibilities is an AI might be able to find all sorts of things with its curiosity that we may not of asking. Like if we just had some form of Oracle AI without any volition in itself, it may just answer our questions, and that might not sort of solve all the problems.
Personally, the form of volitional AI I think that would be likely to be useful is basically the upload scenario,
Yeah.
where you increasingly rely more and more on machines and possibly start uh, putting your own thoughts into machine phase until eventually you can basically you are the computer,
Yeah.
and you found ways to translate your thoughts over to to on silicon matrix or whatever the strata we're using at that time.
Yes. Okay, so Greg Eve, like in a scenario by Greg Egan, like you could have, people, like smart people, demanding large amounts of resources, um, to compute their ideas, for instance. Do you think it'll
You
be
can
as,
try.
yeah?
Smart people demanding stuff just because they're smart doesn't work today. I don't see it working then either.
So we had slow rooms, for instance. I think it was in Permutation City, where the entities that were given the lowest amount of CPU cycles per second were hanging out, and anybody who had friends there had to sort of slow down their experience of the world in order to converse with them. It's quite interesting. Well, on that topic, do you have any favourite science fiction?
Um, it really varies depending on my mood. Um, of course, I can blabber on about some of the science fiction I've written,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. Well, we can do that. Um, yeah, true. Have you published science fiction?
a little bit here and there, like a short story in an anthology, additional material in this role playing supplement, that kind of thing.
What role
No
playing
really
game?
large
Was it
works.
Orion's Arm?
Huh?
Not Orion's Arm.
I haven't done anything for Rand's Arm
Oh,
yet.
okay. Yeah.
I keep toying with the idea of doing large publications, but other projects keep coming up, and honestly, publication, being a science fiction author is not a quick way to become rich.
No.
And I have had to focus on paying the bills
Mm,
sometimes. So,
sure. Yeah. So what's been the topic of interest in your writings in science fiction then?
largely explorations of what's possible.
Hmm.
Like this one setting I wrote was an investigation of okay, take the basis of space opera and then justify it as hard science.
Hmm.
For instance, the faster than light stuff, wormholes.
Hmm.
Wormholes are theoretically possible at least,
Hmm.
so you're not like doing this unobtainium stuff.
Yep.
And at no point do any ships actually exceed the speed of light.
Yeah, that's
Even
right.
setting up wormholes from here to Alpha Centauri is okay. You construct a pair. You have
Yep.
one of them
We're
in
talking
Earth
about like
orbit.
we're talking about like entanglement. Is that right?
No, wormholes.
Okay.
It's
Real
basically
wormholes.
portal
Yeah.
from. So you start off with portals. You
Yeah.
separate them apart,
Yeah.
and then you go in here. You end up here.
Yeah. I heard one of the big problems is actually getting inside a wormhole. That is piercing the bubble while staying
Yeah,
intact.
yeah. Um, there are theoretically ways to do that. And that mainly, there's also a problem of stabilizing the wormhole,
Hmm. Yes.
for which you would need a lot of exotic matter. Although, in the part three of this, we're going to get into the Casimir effect, which is one way to theoretically generate exotic matter, or at least virtual exotic matter.
Yes. Yeah. To It's so you're talking about making this exotic matter um stable by
Yeah,
for giving
well,
it some sort of,
virtual exotic matter.
yeah,
When you actually look at it, it's not all that exotic. It just is able to simulate some of the same properties as this,
right.
without actually having the instability. So
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So just for the viewers' information, we are covering the Casimir effect in the next section. So yeah, well, do you want to delve into what's possible, what you think's possible with this virtual exotic matter? I'm not sure, like, I understand what you mean there.
let's save that for part three because that really delves into the Casimir effect
Oh, okay.
before I can explain that.
Yep. Okay. Well, can you explain what a virtual particle is then?
Again, part
Yeah,
three.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Part three.
Yeah, that whole thing
That
is
is,
down to
yeah,
the
very
Casimir
much. Yeah,
effect
yeah, yeah,
rat
yeah,
hole. So yeah,
yeah. I saw you posting on Facebook about the Egyptian ladies'
yeah.
attempts at making a theory around there. So yeah, we'll
Yeah,
cover
she
that
had a
in the
little
next section.
misunderstanding.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, that's
so
cool.
yeah, so different topic then. So another thing I've been looking into is exactly how would you do this atomically precise manufacturing.
Yeah.
Again, tweezers are one possibility, or sorry, laser tweezers or
Laser tweezers.
optical tweezers. Yeah,
Optical tweezers.
yeah. Another possibility is there may be tool chips that you can get down to the level of one single atom, so you can pick it up like a chopstick, sticky chopstick.
Hmm.
You do have to worry about how then you're going to release the atom where you want it.
Hmm.
But there are ways to do it, at least for certain types of atoms, where
Right.
you can run an electrical charge to form a single bond, and then another charge to disrupt that bond.
Sure.
You have to get the electrics really precise. So
Yes. So, did you see that animation that I think NanoRex sort of funded, where it was basically a fabricator sort of putting together laptops, for instance?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I might provide a link to that in the video, actually. But
yeah.
that was a good illustration. Do you think that visualization is accurate, if you know the one I'm thinking about?
It's one possibility.
Hmm. Okay.
Now, how are they actually going to pull it off? How are they going to build that? That's another thing. And would it actually behave that way? It's possible.
Right. Had Smalley and Drexler been like addressing each other's points accurately, do you think they would have agreed on much?
Um, that gets to a meta question, and this has been this is a perspective actually that I got from the nanotech course that I didn't previously see. A lot of the critics of atomically precise manufacturing and that kind of thing aren't actually being honest about that. What they are is they are protecting their funding.
Oh.
The point was made that a lot of these guys um, have public funding from the government, and if they're seen as promoting something scary,
Mm.
then they will be blacklisted from any possible future funding, and they'll be out of a career just like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they did not dare do anything that's perceived as backing something scary. And all these potentials of atomically precise manufacturing, all the things that can do, there are some pretty scary things that it can do, as is the case with any kind of power. It
Mm.
can be used for good or evil.
Mm.
And a lot of science fiction authors, Michael Crichton, unfortunately, is a prime example.
Michael Frighten. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, have been portraying a lot of these nanotechnologies in scary ways,
Mm.
and have been making claims that frankly are not justified at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's new, it's scary. People don't. It works this way, and people don't bother to question and see exactly what the actual criteria was, and does it actually work that way?
Mm.
Frankly, there's a lot of the same thing you're seeing in the nuclear industry with people being scared of radiation. I have lost count of the number of environmentalists, yes, the air quotes, who you would blow their minds if you got into them, had the idea that a banana contains radioactivity.
Yeah.
And it does. Look it up if you don't
Mm-hmm.
believe. Anyone who's watching this, look it up. Uh, a banana contains measurable amounts of radioactivity because of the inherent parts it does. And by the way, sleeping next to someone in bed increases your daily dose of radiation
Mm-hmm.
by a measurable amount.
Mm.
A very tiny amount. And it's low by background radiation, so it's completely safe. But there is radiation there.
Mm.
There's radiation everywhere. There's radiation in your own body.
Mm. Of course. But what is the type of why do they conflate small amounts of background radiation, low-level background radiation, with some of the more dangerous
Because
forms
they
of?
never bothered to get the context. They don't bother to see what a dangerous amount is or get the concept that there is a dangerous amount.
Mm-hmm.
To them, it exists, therefore it's dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
which is not the case.
Mm. So how do you persuade then people to think differently?
Um, that's a big challenge.
Is it
And I
just
don't have all the I
education?
don't have all the answers there. One thing I do though is try to point out their cognitive dissonance
Mm,
with some of the stuff that you believe in,
mm,
and point out how their fear of this scientific concept, be it radiation, be it nanotechnology, be it whatever, is inconsistent with what they already believe.
right.
A lot of these people will not be persuaded by the externally observable facts. You cite studies, they're just, oh, well, yeah, those studies are either obviously fake or bought off or whatever, or just bounce right off.
Mm,
But you point out, oh, so you're eating a banana, so you're eating radiation. What?
mm,
That's how you get into them.
mm,
It's stuff they already are viewing as acceptable, and point out that this is already getting into that and related to stuff they already understand.
mm. So, in okay, well, you could that's something you could probably achieve through science fiction, right? Through storytelling. Um,
That's certainly one reason why I pursue it.
yeah.
Is I try to do more utopian visions of science fiction, at least where it's justified.
Okay, well, I like the concept of utopia, but often people invoke the word utopia pejoratively. Um, saying it's well, it does come from a Greek word called no place, right? But look, some of the science fiction novelists like Kim Stanley Robinson certainly comes to mind, and even David Brin have focused on utopias and written about them with a lot of success. Cory Doctorow too, but his definition of utopia is more social. Yeah, I think I agree. I'm in favour of getting the utopian sort of side of possibilities of technology into people's head and get people believing in the cause, right? Instead of just automatically knee jerk reaction to anything new or to change, right? Mm, yeah. Have you read any Kim Stanley Robinson?
Not lately, no.
Yeah, yeah. The Mars trilogy was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did an interview with him. He was pretty good. He came and spoke at Humanity Plus in San Francisco when I was over there. It was kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, we're gonna have to wrap this portion up shortly.
Yeah, yeah, I
Getting
think so.
past the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, so we'll do the for the viewers' information. We'll be following up this with the Casimir effect, with Adrian Tymes, and this is one of Adrian's projects. So stay tuned for that, and we'll just end the interview